In regards to the issue of African people committing most of the crimes in Trinidad and Tobago, yes, by statistics, numerically, that is true. However, in this particular instance, it is only part of the truth. And if you give part of the truth while omitting other important or relevant truths, then that selected piece of truth has a similar effect of a lie. So I want to look at this on the backdrop of the wisdom of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, of course, coming off of the national holiday in America of Dr. Martin Luther King, in his last months, Dr. Martin Luther King wrote, "A million words will be written and spoken to dissect the ghetto outbreaks. But for a perceptive and vivid expression of culpability, I would like to submit 2 sentences written a century ago by Victor Hugo." All right, now I want us to walk through this wisdom of Dr. Martin Luther King, not a radical, not someone considered to be militant, or even on the forefront of black nationalism. He was a civil rights leader, loved by the masses, and his philosophy has been accepted by the major political administrations. So Dr. Martin Luther King said, okay, everyone's going to have something to say about the ghetto, about violence in the communities, about the gangs and unrest. Everyone's going to have something to say about that. But Dr. Martin Luther King said he wants to introduce 2 sentences into the conversation by Victor Hugo, which were, quote, "If the soul is left in darkness, sins will be committed. But the guilty one is not he who commits the sin, but the guilty one is he who causes the darkness." End of quote from Dr. Martin Luther King on Victor Hugo. Then Dr. King goes on to say, "The policymakers of white society have caused the darkness." So here Dr. Martin Luther King, just like we are saying in Trinidad and Tobago, yes, by numbers, by statistics, by amount of specific offenses or arrests or imprisonment of individuals, yes, it's us African people. But we are saying, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, you cannot just blame those who are on the tail end of this issue, but someone created the conditions. Someone is responsible or guilty or culpable for creating the foundation under which these crimes are taking place. They're not getting all the blame, but they have to share in some of the blame. Then Dr. Martin Luther King continues, saying, yes, the policymakers of white society have caused the darkness. And then he identifies 5 factors that the policymakers or the wider white society, that black people were committing crimes in, 5 conditions that they created. He said they created 1, discrimination. 2, creating slums. 3, perpetuating unemployment. 4, perpetuating ignorance. And 5, poverty. And Dr. Martin Luther King is saying, black people didn't do those things, but out of those things, the crimes now emerge. Now, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan analyzed this speech and raised some questions. And one of the first things that we could look at is that those 5 elements that Dr. Martin Luther King identified that white society created are not crimes. Discrimination, for the most part, is not a crime. Building a slum is not a crime. Perpetuating unemployment is not a crime. Ignorance is not a crime. And poverty is not a crime. So they have, according to Dr. Martin Luther King, created circumstances, events, and conditions which lay a foundation from which crimes are committed. The conditions and circumstances and events that they have caused themselves are not criminal, but the social and human interaction within such conditions of poverty, ignorance, unemployment, discrimination, and ghettoization, the after effect of being submerged in a subculture of that messy reality is criminal. Then Dr. Martin Luther King continues, it is incontestable and deplorable. Again, we are saying the same thing. It is incontestable and deplorable that Negroes have committed crimes. All right, a lot of people are accusing me of defending the criminals, saying, trying to take attention away of the criminal. Hell no, that's the bulk foundation of my own PhD research. So no one's defending or excusing the criminal simply because they're shining a light on you. But Dr. King is saying, as we are saying, it is incontestable. That means we can't argue with it. And deplorable, meaning, yes, we acknowledge that it's dreadful and terrible, that Negroes have committed crimes. But here is the key phrase that encapsulates this entire philosophy. Then Dr. Martin Luther King says, but these are derivative crimes. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan raises the question, what did Martin Luther King mean by describing the crimes that black people commit as derivative crimes? The word derivative means an imitation of the work of another or something which is based on another source. And Dr. Martin Luther King taught, as we are teaching, that the crimes that black people have committed are derivative. They're an imitation of the social and behavioral patterns of other cultures and other communities, and they are based in another source outside of the black community. So in other words, you see the black youth with the guns and the drugs and the gangs. But he neither imported the guns nor the drugs, and through ghettoization, which was created by social structures outside of the community and imagined up by minds that will never walk through the black community, he has found himself inside that condition. And then you have the additional factors of broken homes, faulty pairing, absence of positive male role models, negative peer group influences, unemployment, educational underachievement, lack of personal self-motivation, and a negative culture all around that is like a catalyst that adds fuel to the already existing fire that black youth find themselves in. But the unfair part about it is that it's only the Africans who go to jail for many of these offenses that other ethnic groups have initiated. That is the part that they don't like. So Dr. Martin Luther King concludes these crimes that black people commit, which he called derivative crimes, meaning they have their root or source somewhere else. These crimes are born of the greater crimes of white society. So when we ask black people to abide by the law, let us also declare that the white man does not abide by the law in regards to the ghetto. So says Dr. Martin Luther King, born January 15th, 1929, died April the 4th, 1968. And in his last few days, when he met with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as a matter of fact, for Dr. Martin Luther King Day, we posted a photograph of Dr. Martin Luther King visiting the Nation of Islam restaurant, one of the Nation of Islam restaurants, and announcing that he stopped eating pork. And he asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad a question, which we'll go into at another time.